Hey, this is RJ May, and you're watching Mr. Mario 2011.
Hey, so what is going on, everyone? It is me, Mr. Mario, and it is very rare that I do share these stories. I've only done one related to something like this, which I'll have that down below in the description if this sounds interesting to you. But this is, as the title says, Bill Gates possibly, looking and admiring the Xbox modding community. Now, this was back when Bill Gates was a part of Microsoft. He was actively working there and everything. And this is an old article. I'm not trying to do news here or anything like that, but I ended up coming across this because I had heard this story once or twice before, and then it was brought up again recently. And I really had to check out to see if this is a true thing or if this was a urban legend, and it seems to be a true thing. I'm going to link the article I'm using down below in the description, but it is from Ars Technica, which is a reliable enough website. I looked into it a little bit, and they had originally in 2006, yes, this is a 9-year-old thing, in 2006 they did an interview with a person named Matt Lee, who is a Microsoft software developer in the Xbox division, so he worked very closely with the Xbox and the Xbox 360, and in this interview, they were asking him about things related to the then upcoming Xbox 360. Now, the reason why I ended up finding this, as I said, is because I was looking into some modding stuff, and I ended up finding out that this was a legitimate thing right here, where essentially the urban legend was, somebody brought in a modified Xbox, they showed it to Bill Gates, and he thought it was a pretty damn cool thing. He didn't say, no, we need to start suing these guys and all that. He's like, how can we reach out to these people? How can I reach these kids? That's pretty much what Bill Gates was saying, but I guess I kind of spoiled it there a little bit, but anyways, we'll get into it right here. So the person that was being interviewed was Matt Lee, and this excerpt here is after the interview they had with him, so this was undocumented in the interview until they brought it up here, but essentially they asked a question, or somebody asked a question to him related to this, and they were asking about simpler development tools for the Xbox 360 being released, which ended up happening, funny enough. So what he talked about is he said, quote, "Allow me to share a related story. A little over a year ago, one of the people in my group modded an Xbox, installed Avalanche, and put all sorts of Xbox mod scene apps on the box, like XBMC, RSS readers, etc., along with some quote-unquote backup games." He rolled his eyes here. He brought this box along to a meeting with Bill Gates. Bill saw a demo of this, was quite impressed, and asked something along the lines of, "How can we engage this community?" Instead of saying something like, "How can we squash this?" It's long been on the back of everyone's minds in the Xbox group. How can we get students and hobbyists involved without disrupting the console business model? The good news is that it's still on the radar. We'll see what happens in the future. Now, granted, you have to remember, this is not a recent thing. This is from 2006, and several people have claimed that these ideas were actually adopted into the Xbox 360 and, into the Xbox One. Mostly the Xbox 360, though. For anybody that doesn't know anything about the original Xbox or a modified original Xbox, or they haven't tampered with one or anything, the original Xbox was one of the most versatile systems that you could mod. First off, you could modify it very easily using soft mods, so really all you needed was a memory unit, or you could, rig up a flash drive to work on the original Xbox. You installed over your soft mod files, you ran an exploit game, which you can get an exploit game now like Splinter Cell. I got a few copies of it now. You can get them for like $1, $2. You run that, you run the exploit on there, you soft mod your system, and bam, you can install a new dashboard. You can go ahead and install a whole bunch of programs on there. So for example, back when you had to pay $25 to unlock DVD playback on the Xbox, yes, you had to do that. You had to buy a $25 DVD remote. I remember that specifically. It came with an application on there that allowed you to watch DVDs and control them with your controller, so that was unlocked to you. You were able to, put in custom maps for games, directly modify games, link it up to your network. You had, Xbox Media, Xbox Media Center, XBMC on there, RSS, so if you wanted to get quick news on there, you could. You had a internet browser. You could install games to it. You could upgrade the hard drive. Anything like that, you were able to do. There was a ton that you could do with the original Xbox. In fact, there are a lot of common stories you'll hear where somebody goes to a thrift store and they see this weird Xbox. It's like crystal and it has buttons on the side or buttons on the bottom, or they just get this Xbox and they hook it up at home and it has like 200 games on it. Yeah, because these systems, most of them, I'm not saying most, excuse me, a lot of them were actually bought and modified later, or people bought them just to modify them, and those, eventually got out into the market and all that stuff. I know several people who bought their systems just so they could modify them, and then, hey, I don't really advocate doing this, but I know a lot of college students, what they would do is they'd pay someone $50 to modify their Xbox, throw in a new hard drive, then they would rent all their games from Blockbuster when Blockbuster was still a thing, and rip them over to the hard drive, and bam, free games. That's how it all worked out. Now, the reason why I say it was the most versatile is because this completely unlocked the system. At the time, this was the 6th generation of video game systems. I believe that's it. Yeah, that has to be the 6th generation systems. So here's the thing with the 6th generation of game systems, right? They were just game systems, really. That was it. Internet gaming was new on there. The GameCube really didn't have that much support for internet capabilities. All 3 systems did, but the network adapter was hard to find. The PS2, it had its own thing going on. The Xbox, that had Xbox Live. It wasn't nearly as refined as it was on the Xbox 360, though. But, you see a lot of these ideas kind of being implemented into the Xbox 360, and that's what people have talked about. Installing games, that was patched in later on. A web browser, they finally put Internet Explorer on there, and I think these are all things that would have just been normal progression on there. Now, I think this is awesome. Back in 2006, they were thinking of this. He even says right here, it's long been on the back of everyone's minds in the Xbox group, how can we get students and hobbyists involved without disrupting the console business model? Because they knew who their people were. They knew the people who were modifying these game systems, not the people who paid to get them modified or bought modified systems, but the people who were actually modifying them were hobbyists and college students. That was most of these people, or even high school students. They knew what they were doing. Hey, I modified my Xbox when I was 12 or so, 11, 12, something like that. So it wasn't very hard to do. I knew how to do this. But really, they knew their audience from all around. But of course, most people were modifying the Xbox and they were, playing pirated games on there, anything like that. But they just saw how awesome it was that people were able to take this. They were able to turn it into a really awesome emulator machine and a home theater system. In fact, I find the mods on the original Xbox more impressive than many mods on the Xbox 360 or the PS3. Now, yes, those systems do have some technical marvels with what they were able to do with the exploits themselves, but with the mods themselves, I don't think it's as entertaining, I guess you can say, because the PS3, for example, that was already an out-of-box entertainment system. The Xbox, the PS2, the GameCube, those systems were just game systems, really, and they had DVD capability, and if you wanted to, you could take them online. That was it. They weren't emulator machines. They weren't designed to, be home theaters or anything like that, but the community was able to make this, and that was awesome. And some people have said, as I said, like, they've seen this implemented into the Xbox 360. Like, there was a whole Windows Media Center application on there. I thought that was pretty cool. They want to tie things into the network more. They want to open up development more, so you didn't have to go out, pay for a big dev kit or anything. You could get into their XDA program or a XNA program, You can get into anything like that. I thought it was pretty interesting. I just thought internally it was cool that they were looking at this, and I'm sure they are still looking at the modding scene and thinking what they could do. And it's kind of disappointing because now the current modding scene is really just Xbox Live Stealth and different variants of it and how people are charging and ruining leaderboards and all that. But back then, it was really awesome to see. I did miss out on most of it, but I thought it was pretty neat. But anyways, I think that there was some involvement with putting stuff into the Xbox 360 from the Xbox modding scene, but I also think a lot of the stuff that was put in that people think is there was also just a natural progression of game systems aging. Now, I want to know what you all think of this as well, too. Like, do you all think that there were a lot of things on the Xbox 360 or even the Xbox One that were thrown in, from the modding scene and all that? Because one thing I immediately thought of with this article, really, was Fallout 4, and that Fallout 4 is going to be supporting mods, like PC mods, on the Xbox One version of there, and I'm absolutely astounded that that's going to be working on there, and I fully welcome it. But aside from that, I think there have been some improvements that have been thrown into the Xbox 360 through the modding scene, and some nice other extra features and everything, but I'm not sure how big it was as an influence on that. Anyways, let me know what you all think of this. This is Mr. Mario, signing off. Thank you all for watching, everyone.